So Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us on the mission of empowering women through entrepreneurship and education.
Oh yeah, it's an easy mission to get behind.
Thanks. And also Sarah, who, as she mentioned, she and I go way back, longer than the 10 years of Global Links. We worked together with 10,000 Villages in Winter Park, which I'm happy to say is still a thriving store on Park Avenue, for those of you who know the Winter Park and Orlando area. But Sarah is also an intellectual powerhouse, a dynamo that works in behavioral change. And she's led behavioral change initiatives in the US-based agency called Marketing for Change for more than a decade. And whenever I'm with Sarah, I learn something new about how we can think about the way we change behaviors and the way we change thought processes really to improve our world and ourselves. So thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us.
So glad to be here.
Thanks. Jessica, can I start with you with a question?
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about Sew House and why you started Sew House.
Yeah. So House is kind of just a natural evolution of my marketing journey. I previously co-founded a marketing agency back in Orlando some years ago, and I had no business starting a business. It was my first time, and I actually was sort of pushed off the cliff into entrepreneurship because I was fired from my corporate job. I had no intention of being an entrepreneur, but as I grew my entrepreneurial journey, I quickly figured out that all the things that were wrong with me in a more corporate environment really thrived in an entrepreneurial environment. And so that started my kick to business ownership. And so I've worked with very, very tiny brands over the years. I've worked with Red Bull and some other really big brands. I've also done some nonprofit work overseas. And Sew House was a natural evolution in kind of figuring out what the next chapter was for me as an entrepreneur. And I knew I wanted to serve women, which were my favorite customer base. And I knew that early stage women typically don't have the funds set aside to bring on a strategist or really hire a team. I know I didn't when I first started. So I went out to start building educational programs. And really the goal is to make marketing accessible, because right now it's not. Marketing is extremely complicated, and it doesn't need to be that way. And most of us know the percentage rate that 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. The first reason for that is access to capital, and the second reason is marketing. And we all know that when women create innovation, communities thrive and the world just simply works better. So I saw it as a natural need to avoid this problem and to help women actually break through that 90% failure rate. And so that's what we're doing with Sew House.
That is so amazing. And I love the energy that you're bringing to the work as well. So I want to thank you for that. We've had the opportunity to observe some of the entrepreneurs that you've worked with, and very much like the entrepreneurs that we have the opportunity to work with in Brazil and India. They're so inspiring, aren't they?
Yeah, it's really incredible. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that you mentioned, Jessica, the idea that of those two reasons for business failure, right? Which one is access to capital and the second is marketing. And through our work in India and the growth of the work in India, we've now actually started what's called the Global Links Impact Investment Forum to start to handle for the micro businesses that are owned by women and others in the Calcutta, West Bengal area, to start to tackle that very issue of access to capital. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I'm so glad we're working with you to help with that second challenge, which is around marketing.
Yeah.
Sarah. Thanks. Sarah, can I turn to you for a little bit and tell us about how you got started with the Marketing for Change and what exactly is a sort of behavioral change agent?
Yeah, usually I bore people at a party when they ask me that question. So I'll try and give you the shorter version. So the reason I got into what we call behavior change marketing was called social marketing before social media came along and confused everything. But I was a reporter. I was a journalist for more than 10 years in Orlando, and got very used to diagnosing problems. But at a certain point in my life, I wanted to be part of the solution, which is much harder. So I was looking for a place to step up and find a way to make the world a better place in the way that I could. and I had connections with what was then a very tiny social marketing agency that is now Marketing for Change. Still a small business, and I'm helping run it. So I know the small business side, and we're terrible about marketing ourselves. Is something we always forget to do. But what I love so what is behavior change? So it is behavioral economics a little bit, and it's a lot of behavioral science or psychology. So why do we do what we do? Sort of the very basics is that there's these two systems in our brain, system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is like the lizard brain. It's very emotional, it's fast, we share it with all living creatures, reptiles and mammals, etc. And then the system 2 is the logical brain. It's the later growing brain. So system 1 is 2 times 2 equals 4. You don't have to think about it. System 2 is 222 times 222 is I need a pencil to figure it out, but I can. It's slower, more methodical, right? But we just spend most of our time when we want people to change their behavior talking to system 2. And really 95% of our behaviors, as most good marketers know, is driven by our emotions and our values. That quick chakra, that thing that connects with you immediately, that makes you feel connected to a brand or to a cause. That's sort of where you need to start. Facts are important, knowledge is important, but it's often a backup. And we spend a lot of time just trying to shove more knowledge into people's heads in the hopes that that's going to make them change their behavior.
Wow. That's really impactful, actually. And I don't know how you bore people at a party, because I thought that was really well explained and very clear. So thank you.
It took me a long time not to go on and on. So just watch you see me. Yeah, just watch you see me with a glass of wine in my hand. You might be stuck there for a while.
So hopefully we'll get just a little bit deeper into some of that work, and maybe how some of that work can help us as we are empowering female entrepreneurs and students, right, to think about the work that they're doing. And so if I can, Jessica, can I go back to you? You gave us a little bit of an idea of why you're working with women, and as you said, they're sort of your favorite target base, if you will, or target customer. But what do you see as some of the unique challenges, right? Why women? Like, what are the unique challenges that you see with them in their small business startups and their small business running?
Sure. So I'll start off by saying that I'm going to speak very broadly and generally, which I know is unfair, and there are always exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, what I've seen over the past 10 years, personally mentoring and women in our current community, is marketing is very personal to us. And as Sarah said, it should be, right? It is emotional, right? Any good marketer knows that you're really just tapping into emotion to sell a product or service. That's really kind of the bulk of it. So most of the women in our community, they share with me that there's this overwhelming fear of perfection, right? Like, we live in a very Instagram-driven society where everything is filtered and beautiful and fake and glamorous all the time. And the reality is that entrepreneurship is not that for most of us. And so women are sort of constantly in this space of like, how do I be authentic, but how do I also be polished? And so it's kind of like they're caught in this conundrum all the time. And most of the time our businesses are our hearts. Like, most women start companies not to make money. They start companies to drive some sort of impact, whatever that impact is. And because of that, it means a lot to us. So when we go to talk about it, it's really difficult for us to do that. We think that our website needs to be absolutely perfect because it has to reflect exactly what's in our brains. And this fear of perfection really holds a lot of women back. And that's just like very surface level. And then kind of take it a little bit deeper in terms of marketing. There are so many channels. It's like, pick a channel out of space, and like, there's so many disciplines. Do I start a podcast? Do I have a blog? Do I do webinar series? Do I do social media? If so, which platforms? And it's so overwhelming. And marketing for women in particular, women are naturally very good storytellers, but because we're so overwhelmed by all the marketing activities, we get lost in those stories. And it's the basics of those stories that make the business. And so hopefully that's a broad answer to your question, but that's why, is because perfection is something that can be unlearned. I have a lot of recovering perfectionists in our community, and there are tools and frameworks that we teach to help them do that. And there's a lot of really great practices just to get you started to learn the fundamentals, where you don't need to feel like you need to slay the dragon all at once just to get your business off the ground and tell your story. So that's why I
Wow.
love working with women.
And I love that you said it because it's so true, right? We are storytellers. We are really good communicators. And yet we've devalued that by some of the overlay of technology and the overlay of perfection.
Yes.
So we're so glad that you're working with us and helping us to think through some of that. And I know that we at the Global Links Initiative, right, have that same issue. Where do we start? How do we get started? And I've always tried to say, and I loved your quote, right? You have no business starting a business. It's like, just get started somewhere and we'll roll with it and we'll go with it. And now 10 years later, here we are, right?
Mhm.
Still going and rolling and figuring it out and stuff like that. So thank you
Yep.
so much for sharing that. Maybe a little bit later, you have a story that you can tell us about a particular entrepreneur without any confidentiality or bias. So I'm just going to put that idea in your head and see if we can come back to that, Jessica.
Yeah, I have lots of stories, and I'm happy to share my own story. And because we've done the same things that we teach, I've had to apply to myself. So I'm happy to share my stories of failure along the way as
Yeah.
well.
And that learning through experience, right?
Yeah.
And being willing to know that failure will happen with experience and what that really means, right? So, oh, absolutely. Very good. Sarah, let me come back to you a little bit. And so, right, our theme today is looking at marketing for social change, but we know that sometimes marketing as an area, right, has gotten kind of a bad rap.
Mhm.
But as you shared with us, you really dedicated your life work to this tool for change, for positive change. So what can you tell us about how those two things connect? Experience about marketing makes it a powerful tool for change.
Mhm. So at the very basics, marketing is an exchange. So I'm offering you something and you're getting something in return. So for Coca-Cola, I'm offering you a drink and you give me money. Though of course, Coke is a really good example because they don't say we are the best, most expensive, sugary, bubbly water that you're gonna buy, right? So Coke adds life. That's the emotional part of marketing, which is used for consumerism, that you can say, you can have lots of, how does that impact your sustainable development goals? So what you're doing here with Global Links is really important because you're applying that power of the exchange, that there's something in it for your customer, in behavior changes, our target audience. But you're also keeping your eye on that triple bottom line, which is different. So what comes to behavior change, back a little bit to what I said before, which is that people so much operate from an information deficit. Like, if I just tell you what I know, then of course you're going to do the right thing. And there's a whole bunch of biases that go into that. One of them is the curse of knowledge. Once you know something, it's really hard to unknow it. And so it's really hard for you to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who doesn't have that knowledge. It's why a really brilliant professor might be a terrible teacher for first years, right? It's really being able to understand. And so that's another place where women in particular, not always, but because we tend to be raised to do a lot of emotional work, we tend to be naturally empathetic. This is a very broad generalization. But the heart of marketing is empathy for your target audience. What are their pain points? What are you solving for them? Why do they want you? And so when you are applying that to, say, trying to get people to go green, what are their pain points? What are they trying to, why would they do this for you? And then it gets really interesting if you start bringing the behavioral science, and you start realizing that what people say and what even what people think they're going to do, even their behavioral intentions don't always translate to behavior. So marketers learn this when people don't buy their products or their services. It's a very clear thing. Much harder to track with behavior, but you can, like, for example, most people are environmentalists. They want to save the environment and they say they will buy green products. But if you follow those people into the grocery store, they will avoid green products. And especially when it comes to, say, green cleaning products, they will really avoid them unless they're really not trying to clean, because they have these assumptions that take hold at that moment of decision. So marketing is very powerful for moving a product. What you're doing here is trying to also apply that to good jobs that also take into account the impact on the community and the environment. And so we do that same thing, but generally trying to focus on specific public health behaviors or environmental behaviors.
Great. Can you just give us, to tether that a little bit to the ground, can you give us just one campaign, for example, that you might have worked on so that people can understand that kind of behavioral change?
Yeah. So for example, here in Florida, there's a huge problem, as you may know, with algae in ruining our beautiful world-class springs. There are many behavioral problems are wicked, like climate change, for example. There's no one silver solution, right? And behavior change marketing in particular, is mostly focused on the individual. What voluntarily can we do? So the most thing people do is they say, don't fertilize. Right? So you shouldn't fertilize. Just don't fertilize. It's bad. Let me show you how bad it is. But every day people walk out of their front yard and the first thing they see is their lawn. And the second thing they see is their neighbor's lawn. Right? And so no matter how good intentions they might be for saving that bay, right, it's just every day they've got that thing in front of them. And so what's their pain point? What do they truly value? So when we were doing this a fertilizer reduction campaign for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, one of the things we did is find out what people's values in the area were. Well, people love to fish and boat, right? And they love to have dinner by the water and just go to the beach, right? They also had lots of pain points around their lawn, because if you live in Florida where a lawn doesn't actually grow that well, you really just have to keep replacing it. So the lawn go bad, they throw fertilizer on it, they get frustrated. So there's this love-hate relationship with the lawn. So we tapped into the both. We did not ask people to save the bay, because you can save the manatees, you can save, you can help the refugees. There's so many ways you can be a good person. And even if you use the bay every day, that's not a strong enough call. But saving your fun and protecting your fun was something that we did. And so the campaign was we asked people not to protect the bay, but to protect their own fun. And then we gave them really easy behavioral cues. So anything you can do in any marketing campaign for a product, a service, or a behavior, if you can make it easier, people are more likely to do it, right? Reduce friction. So we said one behavior. Instead of the 20-page booklet which existed on how to properly fertilize your lawn, we said, skip the fertilizer in the summer and go have fun instead. So that's just one example of really trying to figure out where does our behavior align with something that people actually are shopping for.
Awesome. That's a really good, and for us, as you say, here in Florida, a real challenge, right? A live thing. And I love how you said the first thing we see is our lawn, the second is our neighbor's lawn, right?
Social norms, very powerful.
Exactly, right. And the comparison that we make to others, which kind of ties back to what Jessica's saying, is this idea for perfection, right? Someone else is always, quote unquote, doing it better than us. And so what we sometimes engage in behaviors that are not helpful to our environment or even to ourselves, because we're striving for that, keep up with the Joneses, as we might say here in the United States, right? That comparison. So I'm going to ask both of you, but maybe Jessica, you could get us started. Can you think of any unique challenges or maybe even some advantages of marketing for social impact?
I think that marketing is the number one tool to generate social impact. And Seth Godin is kind of a gorilla in this space. He's been around for a really long time. And he famously coined this saying that marketing is no longer about the stuff you sell, but the stories that you tell. And that is really just so true. Everything that, Sarah was saying earlier is it's, maybe 30, 40 years ago, especially here in the US market, when it was beneficial to be faster, cheaper, better, right? When the assembly line made everything super cheap and super fast, that no longer is a point of differentiation anymore. People already expect you to be better. They already expect you to be priced appropriately. And if you're not priced appropriately and you are priced out of market, or maybe you're a luxury brand, they expect something in return for that price point. So whatever that needs to be. So I think to drive change needs to, and I want to backtrack, we teach this all the time in our community. You don't need to save the world to have a business that drives change. You know, you don't need to be out here trying to solve global warming. If you are, awesome, but you don't have to do that to drive change. You could do tiny little business practices depending on what you care about as a founder, as a founding team, as an organization. So if your values are empowering women, right? How can you do that? And how can you use your platform and your business to drive change? So I think that using marketing as a tool for global change, understanding that marketing is really storytelling, really just means understanding what story are you telling through your marketing, and how are you going to tell that story consistently. And that's really what drives sales. That's what drives brand awareness. That's what drives leads, is consistently telling the same story that you genuinely care about and that you believe in.
Actually, just because I'm listening to you, you reminded me of something that I often say when I'm teaching social entrepreneurship or social enterprise, is you might be thinking big, but if you start small, right? And the sort of Margaret Mead quote, the only thing that really will change the world is small actions by a group of concerned citizens. And so don't be overwhelmed by the problem and therefore not get started.
Yes,
right?
I love that.
I think it connects well to what Sarah said when she introduced herself, that she wanted to be part of a solution. So if we think about that, I am not the solution. I am not here to solve, but I am part of the solution. I'm moving us toward that solution. So that's really helpful thoughts, Jessica. Thank you so much. Sarah, do you have anything that you might want to add in that area?
Remind me of the question, Mary. I was absorbed by Jessica's story.
I know, I was as well. Unique characteristics or advantages of marketing for social impact?
I think I would just go back to saying what I said before. It is really being conscious, as Jessica understood, of the storytelling and the role of knowledge that it plays a part, but it's not the only part. And of understanding that connecting to emotions and values in different ways. So just back to Jessica's example of if you're a luxury brand, people expect something. There's a brilliant behavioral scientist named Maggie Dumas who's written The Green Bundle. And basically she's saying, if you want to sell environmental products, you've got to bundle it. You've got to, and she has a whole series of bundles of how you do it. But Tesla is an example, right? So they're not saying they're not the leaf. They're not, we're green. They're like, we are awesome, right? They are like, if you own this, you've made it, right? So they've really figured out how to sell a green product by knowing their target audience, right? And then wrapping their product underneath it. And I'll just give another example, which is a water conservation campaign we did in the city of Santa Monica. So water conservation always starts with every drop counts. And I'm just like, does it? Go turn on your faucet and let it run. And, you might notice it in your bill. I mean, it usually has to be like a pool link before you actually notice it, because we way underprice water in the United States.
Unfortunately, exactly.
We do, yeah. Right. So, and plus this is Santa Monica. This is like rich celebrities and tech. They have tons of money. Of course, everybody wants to save money, but it's an and, not a leading. It's not I'm doing this to save money. It's like, and it's saving money. So what we looked is we've got all these people who are, captains of industry and leaders in the celebrity space. And we we basically made fun of saving water. Like there's easier ways to save. And we had, like a dog licking dishes, and we had a toilet wrapped in duct tape, and it said no flow toilet, which is sort of a joke on how people didn't used to like, the high efficiency toilets when they first came out. So we had all these jokes of like, why are you doing this? Invest in technology to save water. So instead of telling people to save money, we asked them to spend money because they can. They have 14 bathrooms. Put a high efficiency toilet in every bathroom, and you've just done a lot, right? So it was really, again, going back to knowing our target audience, and telling a story they were interested in. They were very much environmentalists, but they are already doing a lot. So we were asking them to do more in a different way.
Mm-hmm. I love how you brought in the idea of the target audience as well, and really understanding where they are relative to the change you're asking them to make. I think that's really, really important to emphasize. Yeah. We've got just a couple minutes left before I open it to the audience, but I kind of want to ask, just sort of, if you think about it, this is a little off script, so warning, we have pre-done some questions, but anyone who knows me knows I'm not very good at sticking with a script. But if you think about the different tools that you use in marketing, Jessica, maybe you could talk about how you leverage those together for successful storytelling. So you mentioned this overwhelming, like, do I do a podcast? Do I do a blog? What do I do? So how do you help people get started on that journey of thinking about the tools that they can use for social change or for impact for their business?
That's such a good question. Well, I'll pick that apart in several layers. Firstly, there's a lot of misunderstanding that if I just have this right tool, then I'll be able to do X. And that's actually not the case, right? Like, technology is just there and should be used to optimize or streamline or create efficiencies and processes that you already have defined. It's not like there's some magic marketing tool that'll just like help you get there. I think technologists and those who are selling the tools would want you to believe otherwise, but the reality is that, I mean, there's CRMs, there's email marketing systems, there's countless Instagram posting platforms. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? So just the tools alone are quite overwhelming. So in terms of tools, to get started even understanding which tools to use, it really requires understanding what marketing process you were already doing manually and how can you use tools to optimize that experience. So that would be the first step to that. The other thing is, after you do understand what marketing channels you want to invest time into, I'll use email marketing for an example. Email marketing, some people may or may not know, has an average of around 400% ROI over all other marketing channels. Especially for small businesses, email marketing is 4 times more impactful than all other social channels combined. And it's for a lot of different reasons. It's because you have a direct communication to that customer. And because, think about how many email lists all of us are signed up on, right? We forget how personal email actually is and how personal that relationship is that someone is on your email list, right? They've given you direct access to their inbox. That's actually a very personal thing to do. So let's say we use email for an example. And if the point is to tell a story, right, to talk about how your business is creating change or solving this problem or doing this thing, right, it goes back to the overall content strategy of what your brand is trying to put out there. So to be super tactical, we'll use House. We'll use my company as an example. We've broken up our content strategy into pillars. And one of our pillars is communication, education, feminism, as we've defined it, and what we call House Sass, because we're a little sassy. We're sometimes could be a bit offensive, but that's just how we are. Like, we use funny memes and we're witty and we cuss a lot sometimes. That's just the brand. That's just who we are, right? And so those mixture of those pillars is what curates our overall content plan. And so when we think about using our email marketing platform, for an example, we want to make sure that we are highlighting these pillars and being very intentional about the language that we are using and what we are talking about to further tell our story. And our story is that women are amazing, our businesses are awesome, and you should definitely not be afraid of marketing. Here are 10 easy ways to get started. And so by doing that over and over and over and over again, we end up creating trust, and we end up building this authentic relationship with our audience because we're just being who we are, and we're telling our unique story in the way that matters to us. And we're using a tool, our email marketing platform, to help us do that more efficiently. We can do that to thousands of people at once versus me sending individual emails, which would be insane, right? So we can accomplish a one-to-many relationship versus a one-to-one relationship. And that's really the value in using tools like that. I know
Awesome.
that was a very big answer, but
No, it's absolutely, it's super ideal. And you brought up a word that I wondered if it would appear today, which is this idea of being authentic, right? Because certainly when we talk about change and when we're recruiting students and entrepreneurs and we're working with those students and entrepreneurs, one of the first things that I say, and we have some of our students from India are here, and they'll tell you, I have stood in front of 500 to 1,000 Indian students and said, if you're here to help someone, you're in the wrong place. If you're here to think about how you can change yourself and how in the process of changing yourself, you can help someone else to change, then you're in the right place. And that's that authenticness, right? Because we can't be someone else for very long. And I'm just so glad you mentioned the word and the idea that once I've let you into my communication, there's some trust there and how that works toward helping with change.
Yes, absolutely. And, just to kind of put the hammer on the head to provide something super tactical for those who are listening, particularly for email marketing, this is the case for most content strategy, but particularly for email, there's always an 80-20 rule, which is like 80% of your content should be serving, 20% can be about you. And that's a very easy way that you can think about curating that dialogue to develop that trust, right? So it's kind of like dating. Imagine you just met someone and they're like already asking you to marry them. That is the equivalent of buy my product, I just met you. And that's not what we want to do. That doesn't create relationship. That doesn't generate trust. People buy products and services from brands that they know, like, and trust. And your values play a role in that. Your narrative plays a role in that. The quality of your product or service plays a role in that. There are multi-layered touch points that create that relationship. But that's a good word to follow, 80-20 rule.
That's great. That's great. Sarah, we've gotten a question from the audience that I'd like to direct to you initially, and then we'll see how time permits. It says, I'm going to read, so excuse me if it sounds a little stilted. It says, the reason that marketing sometimes doesn't get attention or love from social enterprises is because it's sometimes hard to measure impact of money spent on marketing. So what are some of the practices that you've observed in this area that help both, I would say, with the measurement of the money I spend in marketing, the impact that it has, and the social change that I'm looking for?
Right. So I think with marketing a product or service, there's a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to directly track ROI, right? There are just so many, if you have, if you're digital and you're online and you're tracking, you set up your conversions. So, you've got your marketing funnel, where you want people to go, you've got your waypoints along the way, and you're tracking your different mechanisms for getting them there. Are they opening their email and clicking a link? Are they coming in through your Facebook? And if you've set up your conversion journey, you very much can see whether you're getting to your ultimate conversion, which is a sale, right? So that's a little easier to track ROI, and I don't think big companies would be spending the money they do if they weren't doing that. So when it comes to social and environmental impact and behavioral impact, it is more difficult. And so there are a number of different ways that you can get an approximation, and it often is, unfortunately, self-report and behavioral intent. Though sometimes you can actually measure a behavior. I'll give you another funny story. We were hired by a small nonprofit to promote healthy marriage. It was a grant. It was a craze for a while that if you just told people to stay married, they would, and you just gave them some tools, it would help, which is true. But what this nonprofit really wanted was to get people into relationship classes. And so we did a bunch of research, and really what we found, the first 8 years of marriages are tough. People don't talk, and that when the problems go on long enough, it's no longer people are too far apart and able to come back together. So, and the average year of divorce in America is about 8 years. So we targeted women, segmenting. We targeted women who are about 3 years into marriage, newlyweds, so they're still in that space where they can get help. And our campaign was called IHateHimSoMuch.com, because what it really was empathizing with where they were. They had this magical story about what marriage was supposed to be like, and they were shocked because nobody tells them that it's really hard work, right? And they were feeling very frustrated. So that connected with the frustration, and then it gave them a series of tools: assess your marriage, and we had funny things about guys who don't want to get help, and we added some humor so they felt heard. But our ultimate conversion was to get people into relationship workshops, and that increased by 200%. So there is a behavioral response, right? So you can't always measure, but you do measure where you can, and you want to think about those measures before you start. So if you're launching a Facebook campaign, if you're doing something on Instagram, if you're doing email, what are the industry benchmarks? What do you hope to happen? Track what's happened afterwards, what did happen, and then do your best to figure it out.
Wow. Great. Jessica, we have a few minutes left. Would you like to add something there?
Yes. Yeah. So definitely want to echo everything Sarah said, especially when you're doing like some digital campaign where you're like, I'm going to invest $100 into this ad, and then I can directly see the influence of that investment. So yeah, in those ways, you can definitely, easily track ROI down to the penny. However, the reason I put in the chat, I have a lot to say about that, is because in a recession or when things look scary, marketing is always the first thing to get cut, always. And that is really unfortunate, because that is what the storytelling is what keeps the company going. And without marketing, you're basically cutting off your arms to the rest of the universe, right? To tell that story. So I just wanted to speak to that. And then also I had another point, but I forgot it. So it'll come back to me later. But I just wanted to mention that, marketing is typically one of the things that get cut and undervalued, especially during times of recession and scariness. And it should really be the other way around. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So yeah, I got it. Typically, especially when you're leveraging several platforms like email, or you've got this cool social campaign or whatever, right? Your customers are being tapped by you at different stages of their journey on multiple platforms. So it's really hard to quantify the exact journey that customer took, unless you maybe ask them later, which is a great, as to Sarah's point, if you can, you should. But typically a customer is going to receive a few emails from you, and then maybe they attend your webinar, and then maybe they sign up for this free thing, and then maybe they do a consultation. There's a series of steps across multiple platforms that your customers will engage with you on. And it's the combination of that experience, which that's the power of marketing. It's the culmination of all of those things that create the ultimate conversion, whatever that conversion is supposed to be.
Wow. Very, very well said. Very well said. I'm going to share my screen for a moment, but before I do that, because I want to actually share the websites where people can reach out to you, catch up with you, learn more about the work that you're doing. And before I share, I want to remind the audience here, and of course we know we're live on Facebook, so it will go out to there as well. But here at Zoom, we're going to take a photo in a moment, as Yasmin just posted in the chat box. So if you're able to turn your screen on, your camera on, a lot of times some of the folks that join our webinars do not have the bandwidth for the video. But if you are, please do so. While you're getting ready, I want to just share the screen for a moment and share this information So go ahead and get yourself ready for the photo, but know a couple of things. Our next webinar is March 16th, and I mentioned at the beginning that we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And so we are going to celebrate with the brainchild, if you will, or the brainchildren of the Global Links Initiative, and that's Rick Goings and Eleanor Steele. And they'll take us through like their vision when they started 10 years ago and where we are today. So we'll be talking with them, and we'll be joined by Dean Deborah Crown from here at the Crummer Graduate School of Business, and why she thought that having Crummer as a partner in this work would really be helpful. And then you can also see on the slide how to contact each of us. So feel free to take a screenshot of this if you'd like. I'll also ask one of our graduate assistants, maybe you can place into the chat box the Sew House website, the Lucy Lab Accelerator, which is coming up. It is a great place for our female entrepreneurs who are looking forward to accelerate that marketing for their business. And then Sarah's Marketing for Change and the blog that she does, which you might remember I said at the beginning that I always learn when I'm with Sarah. And so the blog is a great place to continue that learning. So I'm going to stop the share now. We'll come back and we'll get our photos. And I always have to say, this is my favorite part, because some students like Arundipta, I haven't seen Arundipta in quite a long time. So this is like a little come home, everyone, we get to see their faces. So thank you so much. And Emma is a Rollins student. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining us. It's really awesome. Dr. Rumpa Chakraborty, whose name you see there, is also one of our Global Link scholars from Kolkata in India. So it's always great when we get to do these photos, not just because it's a photo of who has attended, but it really is a time for us to say hello to our network and to our family. So thank you so much, Arundipta. You look absolutely amazing as always. So good to see you. So good to see you. So who's doing our screenshot? Yasmin? Okay. So you let us know when you're ready. All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, round of applause. Please join me. Reactions, applause, happiness for Jessica and Sarah joining us. I hope you agree. We've learned so much from you guys. I again want to say, keep an eye on the partnership between Jessica and the Sew House and the Global Links Initiative. So you're gonna hear more from us. We're gonna see a lot more for our entrepreneurs out there. We're gonna offer some of the wonderful services that Sew House has to some of our entrepreneurs. So we're building that partnership and is strengthening that. And Sarah, I hope that you will stay in contact with us. We have so much to learn from you. And of course, I'm already writing down which class I want to have you come and speak to around that. So thanks for the work that both of you do. I want to pause for a moment and see if you have any closing comments in the last minute or two that we have. And thank you for your patience. We started off a little bit tough, rough on the technology, but to your point, Jessica, perfection doesn't exist. We just keep plowing through to make it work. So thank you for making it work. Any closing thoughts, Jessica?
No, I just thank you for having me be here. I'm, always inspired by everyone in the Global Leagues team and what you guys are doing. I'm so excited for our partnership and to expand to empower women all over the globe. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Jessica. And I have to call out that one of Jessica's newest employees is actually a Crummer alum.
That's awesome.
So we're just shows the network, right? That happens once we start chatting with each other. We come to know that we actually know so many of the same people. So thanks for that, Jessica.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Sarah, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just for those who are currently entrepreneurs or wanting to be entrepreneurs, just pointing out something that Jessica said that was really important, is that one of her pillars was something that might turn some people off. It's really, that goes to the heart of knowing your target audience. I think that takes for a while, knowing who your customer is, and not being willing to not sell to the ones who are not your customer. Because if you try to be everything to everyone, you will be nothing to no one. So knowing your story, knowing your customer, knowing truly what your unique selling proposition or your unique value proposition is. And part of that is learning along the journey that, hey, you are who you are. Some people are going to love you, and that's great. Some people aren't, but that means the people who love you are going to love you even more. So just keeping that in mind, that you do have a unique place. It's just figuring out what that is and then really leaning into that.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So with that, we're going to close the official portion. Please stay tuned. I hope to see you again on March 16th, right? So a month from now, and join us with Rick Goings, Eleanor Steele, and Dean Deborah Crown from the Crummer Graduate School of Business. And again, I have to give a call out to all of our entrepreneurs, our scholars who are online with us, our students, and of course, my raison d'etre, the graduate assistants who make all of this stuff happen behind the scenes, and our program manager, Yasmin. So thank you so much. Have a great day. If you're in India, have a great evening, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you.